Good evening. First of all, as you all know, a major loss to art community. As many of you know about the sad demise of renowned sculptor S. Nandagopal, died of a massive heart attack at his home at the Cholamandal village yesterday. Just to tell about him, born in 1946 in Bangalore, Karnataka, one of the first set of artists to move into Cholamandal, a painter, metal worker, and a ceramist turned into a sculptor. The versatile artist is a recipient of National Award of Lalit Kala Academy and the Jindal Stainless Steel Award for Sculpture. Honored with Senior Fellowship by the Government of India, he was a physics graduate from Loyal College, Chennai, and completed a diploma in fine arts from the Government College of Arts and Crafts, Chennai in 1971. Most of his works are of the Frontal School, and some of his larger pieces are displayed in museums as well as in public spaces. I now request all of you to stand up and remain silent for a minute and pray for his soul to rest in peace. National Gallery of Modern Art, Bengaluru, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, is pleased to have this event today, the Artist Dialogue, organized as an outreach program in conjunction with the ongoing exhibition, Regional Modernity-Madras Art Movement from 1960s to 1980s, curated by Ashrafi Bhagat. For today's evening, we have artists Srimati Anila Jacob, Sri Balanambiar, Sri Parvati Nair, Sri S.G. Vasudev, Srimati Ashrafi Bhagat, and Mr. Ashwin Rajgopal. I request firstly Anila Jacob to come on stage. I now request ma'am to take her seat. I request Sri Balanambiar to come on stage. I request Nivriti to welcome him. I now request Srimati Parvati Nair to come on stage. Welcome you, ma'am. I request Sri S.G. Vasudev to come on stage. I request Mr. Ashwin Rajgopal to come on stage. And finally, I request the curator, Ashrafi Bhagat.
Good evening, and all of you have been part of the walk a little earlier today that Ashrafi did. How many of you weren't? Okay, not too bad. So you guys can go and see it, and hopefully what we talk about makes a little more sense to everybody else, because you have a visual reference of what we're going to be discussing today. And unfortunately, we don't have visuals that are going to accompany this discussion, but I will try and make it as referential to the show as possible so that you can put things together. Second question to the audience: how many of you are arts professionals, in the arts, artists, so on and so forth? Okay, so we'll keep it more neutral. We'll keep it so that the non-art people can understand as well and doesn't become overly intellectual. And I suppose it'll be a lot of fun for the panelists as well to talk to you. As a quick introduction, we're going to address the idea of the Madras modern, or modernity in Madras, or regional modernism, as the title says so. So what does that mean? What is regional modernity or regional modernism? I would step back one bit and say, what is modernism? And to quickly sum it up, without getting into too much detail, there was a lot of freedom of expression. People are exploring. There was a lot of inquiry into what was happening in the world. Right? And particularly in India, we look at it post-independence. That is a period when we were also out of British rule and were able to move around, question, and also India was opening up in the 50s and 60s to a global world at that point. And it is at that point where a lot of the schools that we know, Madras, Bombay and Calcutta, which were functioning at the time, started to not become the primary institutions in the country. You started having things like Baroda come about. There was a lot, and then of course the establishment of the Cholamandal Artists Village. So there was this split, or even a little earlier if you talk about the Calcutta School and Shantiniketan, there was this dual conversation that was happening. There were clearly voices that were being heard and decisions being taken as to establish different ideas in art. It was not everybody doing the same thing. And here there were multiple departures. Several things were questioned. Some of them were spiritual in nature, some of them were political in nature, some of them were questioning the very process of creating art. Did it have to be academic? Did you have to paint landscapes? Did you have to paint, or were you just an abstractionist? The idea of abstraction itself becomes very popular in France in the 60s. You might have heard of people like Raza and Padamsi who went to Paris, but you also had others from the Madras school. You had Akitam who went to Paris, you have Vishwanathan who's been to Paris, and they are also indulging in this idea of abstraction. And indigenously, even in India, at that time, you have people who are looking at Tantra for abstraction. So you have Haridasan from the Madras school, you also have Santosh, Jia Santosh, who's in Delhi, who's looking at it. You have people like Manjit Baba, who's come back into India and is starting to look at what is the idea of the spiritual, of what it is to be Indian. You have Raza who came back later. So there's a lot of dialogue happening. Visuals are changing. So coming back to the Madras school, what was happening? You had multiple ideas that were blooming. You had multiple interactions, exchanges. There were a lot of departures. There were a lot of arrivals. And I think today's panel is very well distributed in that sense. So as a quick introduction to each one of them, and probably they would, and I would request them to introduce their practices to you themselves. So Anila ma'am, of course, is a student of the college. She is one of the few but early students there who then moved into Cholamandal and started practicing at the Artist Village. She's a sculptor and probably shares a very unique position amongst women artists who are sculptors in India. There just aren't many or any. So, and then we have, of course, Mr. Balan Nambiar, who was at the Madras School and later went on, I suppose, to explore the spiritual areas of ritualistic practices and looking at Indian art in multiple mediums as well. And there's another interesting fact that he's a writer, he's a painter, he's an artist. Some of my most fascinating pieces are the ones he works with enamel. They're like jewels, you know. So the diverse application of his ideas. Then of course Mr. Vasudev, who comes from Bangalore, or Mysore, sorry, and then comes to the college, is part of a very core formation of the Cholamandal Artist Village. He's there. I suppose most of the younger days were spent there with gatherings with Panikar and everybody talking and discussing. I've seen many photos of all of you sitting there in the beach and in circle. So it must have been a really fun time. New ideas, lots of new discussions going on. There's actually a group of people, like-minded people talking. And again, then we come to Parvati, who is probably a generation after everybody here, and has again come from Madras, has explored her practices both in Madras and abroad, and has come back and started looking at art. Of course, she's not a modernist in that sense, but from there she comes into what now is contemporary, and it is a very important step after modernism is what we refer to as contemporary. Very simple to understand is what's happening now, so tomorrow something else will be contemporary. But is practices that are happening today, and her practice is again very interesting. It goes into, away from what we know of a canvas and a sculpture, and goes into looking at very meditative practices. I think she looks, takes time to look at things, and in it finds form and abstraction. So she can explain her work a little better than I can. And I'm going to pull Ashrafi into this because she's the observer to all of this. and I'm sure has her views about everybody in the historical perspective. But anyway, I'm going to just request the panel to do a quick 2-3 minute introduction about what you do, what your practice is, and typically what is your idea in art, so that everybody gets familiar with what you're doing, and then we will start. We'll do a small session of questions. We'll talk to each other, hopefully engaging with the audience. We'll bring the audience in towards the end of the session. You guys can ask me questions, so it becomes a nice interactive session, and we'll get to some good information there.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for the introduction, and many thanks to NGMA for having me and all the other panelists here this evening to have this wonderful interaction around this extremely important and thought-provoking, it's a thought-provoking exhibition because it hasn't been, it's long overdue, and all congratulations to Ashrafi to have done this and pulled it off. And as a former student, I would love, yes, for a round of applause for her. So, in terms of lineage, I graduated from Stella Maris, and then I spent a year at the government, drawing there and painting there for, well, actually a year and a half. So, in a sense, a sort of hybrid product in some way. And then I did my master's abroad. At the moment, the centrality of what I do is around the drawing practice. It sort of hovers at that line between being real and abstract. In other words, I'm drawing the world. My work is not fantasy, but it's through different lenses of perception. So if I'm drawing landscape, I use found images sent back by NASA satellites. If I'm doing the body, I use images by scanning tunneling electron microscopes. If I'm drawing still life, I use images sent by these giant hadron colliders that looks at matter at its absolute basic level. So, I think you can already see sort of lines of heritage in the line, in the dot. My work is, to say it in a very simplified way, there is an element of pointillism where I think the dot or the punctum or the point is, the smallest indivisible particle, and its endless iterations in a way create the world, and it creates the world of my drawing. I also expand the drawing practice into video, into installations, into photography. And I will stop there because I'm sure there'll be other questions and other interactions, and hand the mic over.
As a cartoonist, caricaturist, before joining the College of Art in Chennai, and came under the influence of KCS Panikkar, and two of my teachers, whom I can't forget, is Santana Raj and Munuswamy. Some of you people who have seen this gallery here, they must have seen their works. And I was quite, happy to be under them. Then we started Cholamandal in 1966, Cholamandal Artist Village. Basically, many people think that Cholamandal is a school. It's not a school. It's an artist village mainly to make a living. So some of us artists, we experimented extending our art to craft. And so batik was one of the craft which we took up, and then it proved successful for us. And so we thought, even if one worked for about 2 or 3 hours a day, it is enough for us to live on that and carry on doing our serious painting or sculpture. And so we wanted a space, and we wanted to have to do the work. And then we thought we should also live around. That's how we bought 10 acres of land on the sea coast, going to Mahabalipuram, that coastal space. And then we called it Cholamandal. It is now 50 years old. Now, coming to my own work, I was fortunate to have these great teachers, including Panikkar. At the same time, I also had the occasion of meeting Girish Karnad, who came to Chennai in 1963. And being two Kannadigas, we could speak a lot about our language, and he exposed me to best of Kannada literature, and he got exposed to a lot of good artwork. Anyway, so then I came across one of the very finest poet Bendre, D.R. Bendre in Dharwar, when I had a show in Dharwar in 1967. And one of the poems of his was, Kalpa Vriksha Vrindavana. That influenced my thinking. And then I went on doing a lot of paintings on that particular theme. Basically, my work is, we were discussing in 60s about what is Indian identity, what is how to make it contemporary worldwide. And so all these three things which I saw in people like Girish Karnad. In fact, he was writing Yayati, Tughlaq and all these plays which taking the characters from either myths or history. And so that also helped me to think in that direction. And being, very fascinated by the Kannada letters, alphabets and things like that, I used them to create my own designs on my painting. Now, then poetry, theater and things like that have influenced me a lot. And my work are more or less based on those things. And earlier it was, I was influenced by the Tree of Life theme. And then I came to the Tree of Life, and then I was exposed to humanscapes, then earthscapes, then Theatre of Life. So this is the series I have done over the last 50 years. And I work in mainly my painting and drawing. Then I also do copper reliefs. I have an assistant to work with me. And in the last 22 years, I've been working with a weaver, translating my painting to tapestry. My interest in the craft started way back in art school. The School of Arts was School of Arts and Crafts when I joined. So Panikkar had allowed us to go to any section one wanted to, and so one learned many things like enameling or ceramics or batik or whatever it is. And so that helped me a lot to think that craft could be used in art very well. And so that's how my interest in other crafts also have, and particularly tapestry.
Namaskar. I feel a little bit odd here because I am not a participant in the exhibition. My association with Madras is only for 9 years in the art field. 4 years as a student, because I was directly admitted in the second year. So 4 years as a student in the College of Arts, and 5 years I was a member of the Madras Art Club. A.C.S. Panikkar introduced me to the Madras Art Club in 1962. So I was working elsewhere and employed in the railways. And so I was using actually the evening time, but all my energy, all my time I spent in the art exhibitions almost every day, one exhibition or other. One thing I want to tell you, the most important period of Madras College of Arts in its history is between 1962 and 66. If there were actually about 20 artists, almost all of them made name. And Vasudev is one of them, Vishwanathan, Adimulam, K. Damodaran, Haridasan, and Akitam Narayanan, who is a little 1 or 2 years senior to them. And from say 60 to 70, I can say. I passed out of the college in 1971, and this is the period also when Cholamandal was established. Incidentally, I am the person who plotted the land in the engineering drawing of Cholamandal. But I was not a member of Cholamandal. Originally I thought of that, but I didn't want to continue because I can tell you, I can confess the reason. For me, A.C.S. Panikkar was a banyan tree. I don't want to be a plant under that tree. So that's one reason I left Madras and came out of here. And when I joined the college, A.C.S. Panikkar he was only 1 year there when I joined there. But when I really look back, I don't think I learned anything from any teacher in Madras College of Arts. except Panikar's help. Panikar was the one who spotted my talent and encouraged me to, or rather forced me or influenced me to leave a railway job to take art as a career. And I am grateful to him ever, because he is the really strong influence on me. But that is one story. But as an artist, I came through my reading habit, my travel, my field work and research, then meeting intellectual at various levels, writers, dancers, musicians, then bureaucrats, some of the people, then scholars. Probably this influenced me to do the research on ritual performance of West Coast of South India, and published about 18 research papers on that subject. But it has influenced to my creative work also. Sometimes I feel Janaki Ram was supposed to be my teacher, but he was more of a friend to me. When I was in the railways, I was helping all the artists to send their work to different parts of India, and through my contact, I was able to get their permission to send it by the train in which they are actually traveling. All this actually. So Janaki Ram was a good friend of mine. Except to K.C.S. Panikar and Dhanapal and Krishna Rao, I never called any other teachers a sir, because they were all my friends. And they were actually very helpful to me, but not as a teacher. I think I learned about making mold from the molder Gopal than actually the teacher. But one of the reasons why I joined the college, I want to tell you, the fees of the college at that time was 36 rupees, annual fees. We get fantastic facilities there. Studios are at your disposal. Nobody is going to interfere. You can do whatever you want and you follow certain syllabus. Then you can actually continue the study. There is an art history session about 1.5 hours a week. In all my 4 years, I attended only half the lecture class. I thought I knew about art history better than the teacher. So I had an understanding with the teacher. I told them I will sit for the examination. I will actually, follow that. But please forgive me. I don't want to attend the class. Reluctantly, I was allowed, or rather, I was given permission. But later, some other students tried to make problems, which somehow it is pissed out. But I am quite familiar with the art history, probably fairly well, and I can actually even write or give lectures or whatever it is. So that is actually. Then subject of my painting was actually entirely mine. I never actually followed the teacher's instruction to do my work. Sketching I was good, clay modeling I was very good. Then I started doing my own work. In fact, incidentally, my first year is a foundation course. The second year actually, because I joined the second year of the foundation course, so that is my first year. But the sculpture I made in the second year is now Madras Museum. The first sculpture I sold was actually my third sculpture I ever made in my life. That is actually in Germany. So I was actually like a duck in a water when I started sculpture. So my subject was first influenced by the ritual performances. Later, most of my sculptures were more influenced by mathematical principles and symbolism associated with the rituals. Later, very recent works are actually highly influenced by mathematics, golden ratio, Fibonacci numbers, fractals, and principles associated with the tantric and its symbolism as well as mathematical principles. So this is how I actually came out or continued. So my association is actually, as I said in the very beginning, is 9 years in Madras. And there is another thing I want to tell you about this. This exhibition is a cross-section. It highlights about that period, but it is not actually entire Madras. There are many prominent artists missing in this exhibition. Vasudha Satharur, Welson Koleri, then There are actually few other artists. A. Balasubramaniam. These are prominent artists in the national level. They are actually missing in the exhibition. I don't want to say that my works are not there. It doesn't matter because my work is actually in the garden here. So that is a I would actually say it is conducted in such a way, in a hurriedly composed, compiled exhibits, and it's actually there is no style or Madras style. There is no actually. There are many artists. If you look at Vishwanathan's painting, it has nothing to do with Madras. Or Akithanarayan's painting, it has nothing to do with Madras style. There is no Madras style really. It's only just a nomenculture which is used by art critics. And we have to, again, when you look at it, you have to look at the art. Individuals are there. There are. And, but they're actually at different levels, different areas.
Good evening. I'm so sorry, I can't speak very well any language. And I can show my talents through my sculpture. I'm a student from Madras College of Arts, and Mr. K.C.S. Panikar and Dhanapal. I learned sculpturing and I did 3 years course, and I finished my course. I started doing myself, my own way of doing sculpturing. First I was doing wood sculpture. Slowly I changed to metal and wood, and now I am doing granite also, granite and metal. And I think because of Ashrafi and Vasudev here, so she talks about me more than. Thank you so much.
Thanks for those quick introductions. And I'm going to use Ashrafi to speak a little bit about an interesting, at least I find interesting, actually, the way Mr. Vasudev spoke about his mentors and the way Mr. Balanam has spoken about his learning in the school. So the idea of learning, what does one go to an institution and take away from it as an artist and as a teacher, as eventually most artists become teachers in the sense, not that you go and physically take classes, but in the sense that your work then inspires another generation, creates another dialogue, and then there is a continuity from there. So how do you, and maybe it's a two-part question, and you can answer it how you'd like. So, and I think I would like Ashrafi to start with that as your experience as a teacher, as somebody who has influenced many generations of students. What is the importance in the Madras school? Because you always hear, with very great admiration, the idea of, if you're an older artist, you hear Roy Chowdhury and Panikar. If you're the current generation of the moderns, you hear of Santan Raj and Munswamy, and then, and then the current generation speaks of maybe Bhaskaran and Alfonso. So what is that these artists, practicing artists and teachers bring to the practice of art, right? And I would like Mr. Balanamber to talk a little bit more about why you think that you weren't learning from the teachers, so to say, in that sense, and how you've evolved your own practices, the imagery. And yes, if you look at your visual imagery of your artwork, it is a departure from what one normally associates with modernism that comes from either the Madras school or that remains in the South, right? Which is not affected, so to say, by the Bombay school, or what we're looking at is that is happening in Delhi. So both the process of learning and unlearning, and how teaching and learning is a very important part of.
I don't know how to answer this. Because if I have to take my life as a teacher, and if I have to compare it with the College of Arts and Crafts, there are two polarities basically. As a teacher in college, of course, my interest was more art history, and I was more interested in design. And for me, it was very important that any practical subject which was done should have a theoretical component to reinforce that, how intellectual thinking is very, very important in creativity. I mean, that was what I learned over the years when I read the masters and when I read the, history of the biography of many of the artists. So that for me was the driving point, whatever it was. And my interest was mainly in design. And of course, art history from ancient to modern to contemporary. Now, if you're talking of, artist teachers like Alfonso and Bhaskaran, yes, these two teachers, from what I have heard from the artists, they were teachers who were very insightful. Like Panika also was very insightful, he could spot talent where it was. Alfonso, I can give you a point of one particular artist, V.V. Ramani, who is a collage artist. He turned to collage because of his teacher, Alfonso. So, Alfonso was a teacher, and in his class, Ramani didn't have paints. So he says, I don't have paints, I don't have any drawing material, what do I do? So Alfonso says, you don't have to have paint materials and all those, various things to create a work of art. And he took a few papers and says, create work out of this. So those papers, which were given to him, newspapers, he created work out of that, and it fascinated him so much that he actually became a collage artist. He does nothing but collages today. So, this is the kind of influence of a teacher subconsciously which registers, and it is very, very important when the teacher gives the particular attention to a particular student at that right moment in the life of a student. Then the Bhaskaran also, it's the same thing. There are many artists, who have said that Bhaskaran could, pick out talents. He knew where the talent was, and he would give that extra push to the students and, make them work in a different direction. As a student, all of us have gone through this, that when a teacher pays a little attention to us, where the morale goes for the student. And especially in art, this is what I discovered as a teacher, that it is very important to pick out a student who is not doing well and just give a little push. And I found that, it made a tremendous difference to them. So, teacher, whether as an artist or as an artist teacher, it makes a huge difference in their approach and their attitude towards their students. So, and I'm for sure that it was the same in the College of Arts and Crafts, where, Panika led the way. And there were, many artists, teachers like Santanaraj Munuswamy. Many artists have also spoken about Santanaraj and Munuswamy in different ways. Santanaraj was very, very extrovert, and when he would see a good work of art, he would do a little dance in front of that canvas and make the students so happy. Whereas Munuswamy will take his stick, make a pointer somewhere, put his head down and walk away. I mean, these are stories which have come from the artists who were students of Munuswamy and Santanaraj. And they say that, what a difference Santanaraj made to their life and what a difference Munuswamy made to their life. Same way with D.P. Roy Chaudhary and K.C.S. Panikar also. One word from them or a nod from them was enough to make their day. So, yes, teachers and teacher artists do make a whole, world of difference. Either you get influenced or you don't get influenced, and it defines your life in many ways.
though one said that we had wonderful teachers in the college at that time, Panikkar was not directly teaching any of us. He was working in his studio, and fortunately, he had allowed me to use the studios, the classroom studio, to work anytime, the night or day. So I would work till about 10:30, 11:30 in the night there. Then he was staying in the same campus. So if he saw the light in the studio, in the classroom, he would walk there. Then sit and talk about the work which I was doing. And he would invite me to his studio in the morning at 6:30, his painting, and then I would go there. The relationship between us was like a guru and shishya. It's not only in the college, as a teacher and in the classroom. No, nothing of that sort. In fact, a group of us, we went to Baroda in 1964 or 64, I don't remember exactly. And there was a discussion, and Panikkar also was heading us at that time. Then KG Subramaniam asked Panikkar, now I would like to know what sort of a teaching is there in your school, because I don't see your students working like you. Each one is different. How is it happening? How is it's happening? Then Panikkar said, I won't answer this question. Any student can answer this question. So I raised my hand and I said, there is no teaching in the college. There is no teaching in the college. We have learned everything ourselves, but in our classrooms, Santanaraj would be painting, Munuswami would be painting, and Panikkar was painting in the studios. We are allowed to walk anywhere. Seniors doing in these scholars' room painting. And so, we learned a lot from these people. Discussions would take place between us. That's how one learned. And so the Madras School of Art either produced good artists or bad artists. There are no mediocre artists. This is exactly what has happened in Chennai. There are no mediocre artists. If at all, there are good artists. Now, this is what I felt about education there, and Panikkar later on also. And I disagree with Bala Nambiar that Panikkar was never a banyan tree. In fact, he was part of the tree, and all of us were put together, we were banyan tree. He never considered himself as a banyan tree under which nobody could grow. And so that's my way of thinking. And even in Cholamandal, when we were living there, he would walk into the room at 6:37 in the morning, he would knock the door and say, hey, I would like to see what you are painting now. This is the way he interacted with artists. He never considered us as students, he always considered us as artist to artist discussions. And so that made a lot of difference. And in fact, 1964 to 66, I got national scholarship, and then the government of India asked me, which institution you want to go and work? I said, Madras College of Art. Then I worked under Panikkar. And 1966, when I wanted extension of scholarship, 1965, when I wanted extension of scholarship, I was interviewed by Manisar, Sanyal, and Bendre in Bombay. So I was the only person selected in 1964, but I had to go for an extension to Bombay. And then Mani sir asked me, now that you have worked under Panikkar for all these years, why don't you come to Baroda and study there? I said, no sir, I want to study under Panikkar for 2 more years. Because I felt that need to the discussion which we were having between us had to make it more concrete. It's not like just, doing something and going away. So Panikkar was very particular about that, and he if at all he liked somebody's work, classroom work, he would take it home. He would take it home and show it to his wife and his children and discuss that work and call this artist home. These sort of things he was doing, and that made a lot of difference to all of us. And another thing about in the college is, they never would talk about the bad part in a painting. If at all a painting was there, whether Santanaraj or Munuswami, anybody, they would only say what is good in the painting. What is good in the painting. That made us realize how we should progress from there. So this is where I saw the teacher-student relationship.
Well, the problem in art institutions in India, all cultural institutions I can say, and I can say this in a fairly authoritative way because I have done a lot of study and survey in all the art institutions, cultural institutions. One of the worst things happened all through the history last for at least 50 years is appointing the former student as a teacher in the same institution immediately after graduation. In this process, most of our art institutions are really ended up with the inbreeding. This happened to Madras College of Arts, it happened to Kalakshetra, it has happened to JJ School of Arts, even in Baroda. The former students immediately after graduation are appointed as a teacher. So recently, I am one of the actually co-chair in a survey or in a committee who is doing a research and a report. I was supposed to give a report, already submitted the report. I made this as a very strong point. No student who studied in the same institution should be appointed as a teacher of the same institution within 10 years from the graduation. This was one of my strong recommendations. When if you want really a good teacher, we need fresh talent, fresh teachers. When I was in the college, Madras College of Arts, I couldn't get any new knowledge. In the sculpture department, it was zero. Janagram is a good person, very good friend. In fact, he helped me in a very special way. And last year of my course in Madras College of Arts, for 5 months, I was working in the metallurgy department of IIT Madras, learning bronze casting, welding, and this aluminum welding and normal steel welding. And Janagram was actually gracious enough to give me special permission. He was giving attendance in the college registrar. But I was allowed to work in the IIT Madras for 5 months. And that has helped me a lot because as probably some of you might know, I do painting and drawing, that is on one side. Then I do jewelry enamel on copper and silver and gold. And then sculptures I did many. Cement, bronze, normal steel and stone. And last 16 years I have been doing only stainless steel sculptures. All this it happened because of 5 months course or 5 months internship. I am using the word quoted in quotation at IIT Madras. See, my teachers are good. They are really good. I still remember when I was learning in the Madras Art Club in the evening classes, Panikkar came and explained about using oil color. He is a good teacher. And there are other people, teacher. But somehow, collectively, if I say, Madras College of Arts didn't have good teachers. After that generation of Sandanraj and Munuswami. Even now, it is hopeless. It's a disastrously hopeless because there are no good teachers. And the same thing happened to JJ School of Arts. In even Baroda, former students are appointed as a teacher. Many institutions, if you make survey, all the cultural institutions, not only painting and sculpture, but also performing arts, this is happened in India. So, as far as a teacher is concerned, teachers' influences of Gurukula system is our tradition. We can actually do a lot.
I'm going to take off from that note and look at another. I hope this was insightful because there are 2 points of view, which is one on how teachers allow you to grow, and another angle where an artist wants to have learning but doesn't find it in the immediate institution. So something to think about. So from there, I want to depart on a small point that you said. I do understand where you're coming from with the idea that institutions are built within the institution, and therefore it does create issues. So I want to talk about a small, now we'll talk politics, because there is politics in art, and I think in a way all artists are politicians because they want their point of view heard, and their point of view is the only point. So at the college, at the where Madras Art Movement exists, in the 60s, there was a period of time where there was the government at that time who came and said, no principal can be there for more than 4 years, and the principals had to be, I think they had to finish a year, a period of being a principal at the Kumbakonam College, and then they could become principals in the Madras School. And it was around that time, I think, the first, I suppose, visible, signs that there was some kind of a partition in ideas, right? So you have the Cholamandal school, you have, or rather the ideology behind Cholamandal and everything that came with it. And then you have the other artists who were there through the college, who were creating their own identity, who were coming in through certain, at that time I wouldn't say political backing, but were coming in through certain political identities, regional identities within the Madras School. So, I mean, any of you can take this question, but what do you see politics playing a role, both in terms of education and art, as well as the current situation, or as a way of expressing your thoughts as well? Where is there a politician in you? Is there politics in your art? And do you see education of art being politicized?
To the previous question, because I don't think I'm qualified, I wasn't there at the time that you're talking about. But, pedagogy is a very complex thing in terms of, when you're doing art at the basic level, there is skill sets that you need to learn. And I think that's something that's true of, the Madras School or Indian art in some way, that craft and art are not sort of divorced in the way that they are sometimes in Western art. So certainly as a student of Chennai, in Chennai or in Madras at the time, first at Stella Maris and then at the Government School of Arts, I was very grateful to learn technique and to learn skill. So because I'm someone who still believes in that, in the notion of the two not being two separate parts. But there is also then a process where teachers teach you, and then a process where teachers leave you alone, where you are thrown in the deep end and said, we're not going to hold your hand anymore. It's time that you went out and we give you a framework, and within that framework, you go and read and you go and experiment and you go and learn. And I think that process is very important as well, because otherwise you just become a clone of the person teaching you. So, both in Chennai and then later on in London, I won a scholarship and I went to St. Martin's, where, it was important to learn this language, a certain language of art, and also to be told that, right, now you go and figure out what it is that you want to do. But what I would argue is that that was only possible because a certain basic skill set was learned. That, I know that this is an old debate, but still I think it's worth mentioning that, if you're a writer, you are expected to string two sentences together and string them together well. So as an artist, I feel that there is a certain skill set that you need to be able to bring to the table. It's something that you can riff off. It's, you can't rebel against something if there is nothing to rebel against. So I think in that sense, pedagogy, in what I got out of both experiences in Chennai, was very important to me. But it didn't end there. It was a stepping stone, but it gave me a foundation with which to move on to other things. I mean, all art is personal, of course. There isn't any such thing as a Madras style, I don't think. I think some of the the learnings that we've had, I think artists are also engaged in the process of osmosis. So, you know, in a way, my art will continue that debate of what is Indian in my art. It's not obviously or in any way Indian, but I feel liberated. I don't feel that sense that it's got to tick certain boxes, but there is a process of osmosis. I feel, you know, that there is an inheritance of a sense of line, there is an inheritance of a sense of detailing, of being able to imbibe from the place that I lived in and I grew up in, almost by osmosis, not by an organic process, not this process of today I will decide that I take this from this and this from this, which is sometimes what artists do. But I feel that as, say the contemporary generation, I mean, modernism was both a moment in history and an art period. And I think increasingly there is this room for regional modernity. I mean, from when I was in Singapore to when I'm here, it's no longer a homogeneous term inherited from the West. And I think that's why exhibitions such as this are important, to reinvent and relook at what modernity meant, the place that you lived and worked in. And then to be historically informed, and then to work as a contemporary artist in that space. In that sense, I feel the history and the thinking and the conceptual thinking of that place are important as something that you build on. So I'm not sure I answer your political question, but I hope to some degree I answer that need for pedagogy and the need for learning that I found very important when I was.
Yeah. I too had my differences with Panikkar. I used to argue it out, and we used to meet almost every alternate day, you know, from volleyball to home in the evenings. And he would ask me, what do you have to drink? I said, I have got some rum. And he would come and he would sit and have rum and have arguments. And his wife also would join. Next day morning he would come and say, I think what I said yesterday was wrong. Namu told me it was not correct. He would apologize. He would not carry it. Never carried this sort of it. That's my experience, Balan. And the other thing is about politics. You don't have to be an artist to be a politician. Every one of you is a politician here. And one person will have two politicians in them, some of them. So, and it's the ego which is really creating the problem, not anything else. Now, regarding the, if I want to say something about, you were talking about principles and 4 years here and there, and I was part of this thing which, when we started Cholamandal Artist Village in 1966, you know, quite a few of people like Bhaskaran, Adimulam, Dakshinamurti, they were all part of it. And then there was a problem when Panikkar retired and he was reinstated. He was asked by the government to get back because superannuation had changed by that time. And so there was a problem. The next person was Mr. Dhanapal, and he thought he should be sitting on that chair. So DMK came to power at that time. Congress was out, DMK came to power. And then slowly some of these people used Tamil, anti-Tamil feelings. That was the worst thing which could happen in Chennai. And friends, we have eaten in the same plate and gone together everywhere. They became enemies. They said, I'm a Tamil, you're a Malayali, you are this one. I said, amongst artists, what sort of a difference is this? We have all, I told Bhaskaran, who was my classmate, very close classmate, a friend of mine. I told him, look, we have started Cholamandal. It's to be together, to carry on. Our life is in Cholamandal now. So why should we bother about all this sort of a politics? He said, no. As far as this Tamil, this sort of a feeling was brought in. Unfortunate. So they divided Cholamandal, but I must say that there is no Cholamandal school. You said something like that. And I don't think all the artists in Cholamandal who are working, they're all alike. Each one have their own way of doing things. Haridasan was different, Vishwanathan is different, Akitam is different, Anila is different, I am different. I mean, see, we started Cholamandal mainly to make a living, not to create a school, not to create one movement in art, nothing of that sort. So, and it is successful in the sense, and I remember very well 1967 when Panikkar was interviewed by some journalists in Chennai. Two questions he answered. One is, he was asked, how long is it, how many artists, now that you have got about 20-25 artists, do you think all of them will be very successful? He said, no, it's an experiment. Even if 5-6 out of these 20-25 succeed, it's a great success for us. And then, what about the longevity of the artist village? He said, one generation. I do not know about next generation. Artist children may not be artists, or they may not like to stay in this village, or they may like to sell the place and go away. So, both have succeeded. Cholamandal, many people think that, people say, people are selling their land and going away. Well, you can't help it. It's a one generation and we have done it. It's an experiment. A great experiment at that point of time. Today, lot of my artist colleagues here in Bangalore, they say, why don't you start a Cholamandal here? Because they know the problems they're facing today. No sales of painting or sculpture. So you people sorted out all these sort of problems in 60s. Why don't we start something like that here? I said, a group of you come together, you can start. You don't need any one of us to help you. You can start yourself. Now, that is the situation we are in. And so, as I said, art organizations, I think Balan has a point of view, but my point is this, that any art organization has to be built. It's not that easy to build. And if Cholamandal has gone about without any help from any source, no government grants or anything, till today, 50 years, it has gone about. It's an organization. It's an organization which carries the whole thing. There are artists who are working towards organization. They are doing some work. Each one of them, whatever they could, they put in some time to do the things, and then it goes on. How can you do anything without an organization? And you need to know how to sort out the problems of an organization. And Panikkar, another thing which I said is, since Panikkar was such a towering personality himself, he was not just a painter, but he could also talk very well, he was a very intellectual, and so many people at that time couldn't come to his level. So naturally, he was asked to be the head of the institutions, and he went on like that. And even Cholamandal, when he was president for a few years first, and then he said, I don't want to be president anymore. Then we requested him, please be there till your life. So he was president, but he allowed all of us to do whatever we wanted. He said, make mistakes, it's okay, but you will learn in the process. And I learned a lot of things from him from 1962 onwards. And that's one of the things which makes me feel that I can organize things. But organizing is very important, to understand each other's problems and to understand artists' problems. And if you don't have that sort of a organization capacity, you can't run the things, organizations. And you can be individuals, very easy to be individual, without any problem. I can just paint at home, I can sell my paintings and can carry on. I don't need organizations to help me. But don't you think it's responsibility of each one of us to, as artists community, to be responsible to organizations, to run the organizations. And if If half a dozen artists didn't come together, we couldn't have got this place, National Gallery of Modern Art. Today I'm telling you, when we didn't have National Gallery of Modern Art, it is just half a dozen artists in Bangalore. We put together our brains. We had a press conference. We said we want a building for NGMA. We demanded it. We got this place. Individual couldn't have done it. It's an organization. It's very important. And so I think that's what make me work with organizations even today. One thing is that one should give complete freedom to the generation of artists. You should not hold on. You can give the freedom, and then it works very well.
I just add a small refinement that I said when I said, I agree there isn't such a thing as a Cholamandalam style or a Madras style. What I meant by that is that I don't see it in a reductive sense, but in the sense of when you look at the show, you do see threads running through. And I think those threads are interesting, whether it is, a certain sense of philosophy, a certain sense of engagement with craft, a certain sense of playing with the line. These are, I wouldn't reduce it or be reductive about it, call it a style, but there are elements which hold it together as a school. And I think for a next generation of artists, looking back, seeing that is interesting. So I just wanted to make that small refinement.
Thank you. I think it's been fairly insightful. I hope it has been. We'll take a few questions from the audience.
No, can I ask a question? I'm directing this to Ashrafi, because Balan, in his, when he said that he doesn't feel that this exhibition, you could have included some other artists who are important, and I just want to know from you whether you feel that you have missed out or you could have done more justice. I just want to ask you.
Actually, I have defined a time period. It says 60s to 80s. And I also made it very clear in the book which has been brought out that I speak only about the core artists who were responsible for defining this along with Panikkar. And, it's not possible to take all because I have done my research and there's something called the review of the literature. And when I was doing that, I found, certain names were being constantly thrown up, which meant that, these were the artists who have played a seminal role in defining the contours of the Madras Art Movement. And certain artists could not be included at all, like Valsan Koleri, I don't think lived in Chennai, he went away to Baroda. Valsan Koleri, however, was never on the scene. So I didn't even think about Valsan Koleri. And then there is a few artists, which I felt could not belong here for certain reasons. There were certain artists whom I included because they had certain affiliations, and these were the artists who were actually in the woods, and they were brought out in the last 10 years or so. And keeping that in mind, that is how, I curated the whole show. It was impossible to put all the artists. These are questions which are coming to me. But as a researcher, I know, what I have done. And I have done it very objectively. There's no subjectivity because I don't know any artist and I have never worked with anyone. One of them, I've only looked at work of art and then, I've defined my threads of connectivity and how, one particular ideology has helped in, defining it as regional. So basically that way, many artists have written me emails saying, how come this artist has been left out, that artist has been left out. Well, I know exactly what I have done. I know the kind of research I have done, and I know the artists to whom I have spoken to in the 5 years that I did my research. So with confidence, I can say that what I have put up is with conviction and without any partiality or any of those things. I have never brought in those aspects into it at all because no way it comes into it. Neither my emotions, nor my subjectivity, nor my closeness or proximity with any of the artists to say, okay, I will take you and I will not. So this is very, very objectively done, and I know exactly what I have done.
I want to ask Mrs. Bhagat one question. If you are asked to do another second edition of Regional Modernity from 1980 to present day, 27 years, how many artists you can actually find in this region, the same region?
As a Madras Art Movement, no, they will not be. No, regional modernity stops here. It stops here. There's no something like, going beyond 80s. Just this morning, we were having a conversation in the train, and she was saying now there has to be, I was also thinking, and she also voiced it, post with a dash. Madras Art Movement. So that dash is very, very, it has a lot of energy there, which will say, what is that dash, and then the Madras Art Movement, that post. Actually, it is the contemporary, artists who now should be considered after this movement and in what direction they have gone in the 90s. So what defined the 60s, what defined the 70s, what defined the 80s, and then the 90s, why the artists who, came up were so very different.
First class. There are exceptions. But if you take 10 students per year with a merit, 50 into 10, 500 students should have been in the last 50 years. How many are there in practical side? I would say not even 50 students. That means 10%, not even sometimes a 10%. It is bound to happen. That natural filtration is going to happen in art field. That only the very selected people remain they beyond a generation. Once I asked Ashok Mitran, a Tamil writer, when he came for lunch at my house, I asked him, how do you judge a work of art or work of a book? He said very beautifully and very innocently, he said, if a book is reprinted even after 25 years, if the book is actually quoted after 25 years, if that book is remembered after 25 years, he said, that actually has a merit. I will apply the same yardstick to painting and sculptures. If you can remember that sculpture or painting even after 25 years, I'm not calculating that exactly 25 years, say a generation, I would say that work has a merit. So this, otherwise, I remember reading a famous book, article called Book by a British author long ago. He classified books in two categories. One which is actually for time being. It is something like a long article. It is compiled as a book, like a travelogue or a biography sometimes. Then there are books which live beyond, books which live beyond the generations. That means it may even live 2-3 generations. But Shakespeare and Kalidasa and other people live ever. Same thing happened to painting and sculpture also. Some paintings are remembered only for a generation. Some paintings are, nowadays you get this, quite a lot of immature artists get fantastic publicity in newspaper, and that is only for 1 or 2 days. Or then next year you may not even remember the artist. But same thing is going to happen in art also. But in this exhibition, there are masterpieces. There are some of the best work. Fortunately for me, at least about 20 works exhibited here, I have seen the artist painting, including the painting which Vasudev did, that Vrindavan is Bandre's painting, and Panikar's painting, I was actually watching. This is actually the learning process, not from only teachers.
Were you there right through for 5 years, or did you join? You joined in the second year, you mentioned, right? No.
6 years course.
You did the 6-year program, right through, right. And you also, Anila?
I was about 6 years.
Okay, right. I felt that all of you maybe have been I realized at that period of time, art, they felt there was no money or a profession. So parents won't encourage children to join an art school. It was also a diploma, it was not a degree. They felt they should have a degree. And did all that affect you in your personal life? I mean, in your choices when you went to art school? Parental influence and, you know, societal influence.
And I agree. I understand what you are saying. And it's because one wanted to learn art, one wanted to be in atmosphere in art school, one had to force oneself and go there. Because, you know, it's the parents, they had to say yes to it. Of course, you know, it took some time for them to realize the seriousness of their children, what they were doing in the art schools. And I think it's a passion, you know, for a youngster, a passion to get into art. I mean, it's not anything. It's not like it's any profession. It's a passion. If you have that passion, profession comes later on, you know, and money and everything. That's not the thing which one thinks of even. Even when I joined the college, I never had much money, but anyway, I went to some of these places and did illustrations, jackets and everything to make little money to buy my color and canvas. I did that. And when I got national scholarship, I had enough money to throw for all these things. So, but it all depends on, individuals. But if you have passion, you can go through all these things. And whether it's 6 years course or 8 years course, it doesn't matter. In fact, I would prefer even 8 years in a college. Because there is such a lot of atmosphere, you know, beautiful atmosphere to work with, seeing senior artists working, senior teachers working, and, you know, interaction and things like that. It's a heaven, you know, really it's a heaven.
I mean, you may have had to you may have had to force your parents to realize your passion for you to have reached where you reached, the college over there.
No.
Because some of you joined later the college, means it took longer for you to convince your parents that this is really what you want to do.
I could join an art school because unfortunately, I had to do physics, chemistry, mathematics, which was the boring subjects for me. But then, to convince my parents, I had to do that. But then, fortunately, there was an art critic called Venkatachalam at that time who told me that you should go to an art school. And he convinced my parents, please send him to an art school. Chennai is very close by and Panikkar is a very good teacher. That's how I went. But then, today, I'm telling you, I have met some of my classmates when I was studying here in the National College, Bangalore. Some of them I meet. Some of them are retired, chief engineers, bankers, you know, all this. I say, you did a very good thing. You chose whatever you wanted. We just worked for our dal bath, but you worked for something else, you know. And so that is the thing. And even in the family, all my cousins, they feel that I did whatever I wanted to. I didn't become a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor, but I wanted to do art. And they respect me a lot now for having taken this and gone about. I think it's important that you convince your parents at some point of time. They will get convinced. Yeah.
Sometimes it's not what you do to make art, it's what you're willing to give up to be an artist. There is a lot of stability that you give up. There is a set role or a set path. There is, you give up, when even, you know, I decided to take art. It was then, you know, it was then truly and a position as a woman artist. Yes. I mean, just to say that, you know, I was, just to give you a background, I got a state rank in Tamil Nadu. And, you know, the principal of the school was very pleased. And then she said, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be an artist. She called my parents and said, you know, your daughter's crazy. She could become an IAS officer or an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, and she wants to do art. So yes, it is important to have supportive parents, because without them, you know, they said, well, if this is what she wants to do. And then the word passion was not the misused word it is today, where art was not a profession then. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I mean, it's good to have a well-developed landscape in which to be an artist, to be part of an ecosystem of art. It does make life easier, a little bit easier, not that much easier. But, you know, if you're in there because you think it ticks certain boxes and it's a good profession, you're completely in the wrong field, because it's there's a lot that you need to give up, and if you're willing to make that sacrifice, I would say it's only then you know it's worth it to be an artist. You can be lucky, you can be successful, and these are good things. I don't see any great virtue in being a starving artist or in being, you know, an artist who's never discovered. These are wonderful things, and they should happen to all good artists, but they may not. And if you're willing to accept that, to accept the things that you will need to give up, it's then worth it being an artist.
You are mentioning about the parents' attitude, you know. See, I have been actually conducting art classes for children for the last 46 years. Actually, it is all 99.9% of the children are interested in playing with the color and their talent. Talent is suppressed, destroyed or disturbed by parents, ambience in the house, atmosphere, first teacher in the school, and the bad raw materials first they are given. And this actually disturbed the children. So I blame the parents if they are discouraging, not because they are not brought up with the interest in art or playing with colors. You know why art is neglected in India? It is because all the politicians and bureaucrats never had a chance to play with colors when they were young. And you know, I'm actually making a passing comment now. After independence, after Maulana Azad and Humayun Kabir, we never had a central minister to encourage culture.
Is there any particular reason why Bangalore and the NGMA was chosen as a venue for this exhibition, which focuses on the Madras Art Movement, or am I wrong? Or I just want to know, just out of curiosity.
Why it was chosen? Well, should I say it is providential? Actually, the proposal came from Mr. Vasudev, and he said it should be held in a place like NGMA. And I couldn't think of any other place except NGMA in Bangalore, because, you know, of its close proximity to Madras. So the proposal was given, it took its time, but today it has materialized. It might. I'm trying to be positive and negative at the same time. Yes, it might. It will. It's definitely a traveling exhibition to Mumbai and to Delhi. Yes.
I'm sure you guys have questions, but we're out of time. And so I suppose if they're around, you can interact with them one-on-one. But I would personally like to thank everybody for being part of this, for the audience, to listening to us kind of take off on some tangents. But I think what is most important about this exhibition, which is pivotal to this talk, is irrespective of what we've spoken about here, irrespective of what you might have heard today, I think all of you should take the time to come and just see the artwork. It's a very important part of any art. The artist creates artwork. Yes, it could be for themselves, it could be for any other purpose, but end of the day, it's been created as a visual that one should look at, and you will respond to it emotionally, some kind of emotion, whether it's happiness or sadness, or you hate it or don't like it. Everything is an emotional response, and that's what art does to you. So I would encourage all of you to come back, see the show, take your time. And as was pointed out earlier, I think this has probably the top works of any of these artists that you'll ever see anywhere. And yeah, yes, and I will. So I'm done. So I will let Ashrafi wrap up.
No, it's not a wrapping up, but I just want to tell you that when I did my research, talking to the artist was so exciting. it was a real experience, what they had gone through to achieve what they had. And, when I was given this opportunity, because I thought it would be best to source out all the works from NGMA in Delhi. So, and believe me if I tell you that 80% of the works were in the store. And, every time a work was brought out, my eyes would shine and I say with great excitement, oh, it is Achyutan's, oh, it is Haridasan's. I mean, works which I don't think I have seen or anybody has seen. Like especially Mr. Vasudev's works, I was stunned by its size. I always thought they were small works. And works which I thought were small, turned out to be something else. And vice versa. So, it is really worth a while that it has seen the light of the day in this place. And these I consider great artists who have really worked towards achieving what they have achieved. Eminence is exactly the word I would use. And please spread the word around to, for people to come and have a look at this exhibition. Otherwise it would have remained only in the store for I don't know how many centuries also. Thank you very much.
Also, before you all leave, I would really like to thank our artists for coming today. Thank you, Ms. Anila Jeka, Ms. Priya Nair, Ms. Ashafi Bhagat for helping us as well, last minute though included, Mr. S.G. Vasudev and Mr. Bala Nambyar. And lastly, I'd also like to thank Mr. Ashwin Rajagopal. Thank you so much, sir, for having us, have you all with us rather.